We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we record this podcast and pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise their ongoing connection to land, waters and culture. We recognise that sovereignty was never ceded.
The case of Leongatha's Erin Patterson, who was recently convicted of murdering 3 relatives with a deadly mushroom meal, captured headlines around the world.
I'm devastated. I lost them.
But did you know an even more prodigious killer lived in the same small Victorian farming community in the 1930s? Join Leongatha journalist Matt Dunn and special guests including author Katherine Kovacic and former Victoria Police Detective Narelle Fraser as they unearth the chilling story of serial killer Arnold Sodeman on Sodeman, the Schoolgirl Strangler. Episode 3. Hazel.
Comes home, he turns his car into the street, his headlights light up Hazel and this stranger standing at the gatepost. He sees Hazel definitely, the man, blue suit, grey hat, identified again, but seems to be hiding his face.
But because of one pig-headed policeman, all these families suffered for generations, you know?
This episode contains adult themes. Listener discretion is advised. As 1931 approaches, the effects of the Great Depression only deepen, with unemployment continuing to rise. 40,000 men move around the country looking for work. Meanwhile, on Saturday, January 10, Melbourne wakes to a new horror: the murder of 16-year-old Adeline Hazel Wilson. Hazel is discovered in eerily similar circumstances to Mena, and just over 2 kilometres away. Despite this, police believe they have Mena's killer safely under lock and key. Of course, things will go awry. Not that the force's investigators pick up the clues. While Mena's younger sister Joyce would give unreliable testimony throughout, her description of her sister's killer's attire, a blue suit and grey hat, matches what was worn by Hazel's probable killer. I meet with the author of The Schoolgirl Strangler, Katherine Kovacic, outside Hazel's family home on Nelton Avenue in Ormond, right next to the spot where Hazel and Sodeman spoke on that fateful night. So, take me through the lead up to them having conversations outside the house.
Sure. So it's a Friday night. Hazel's with her friend Lucy Hogan, and she's taken Lucy back to Glen Huntly train station. Lucy's heading off home. That's about 8:30 at night. Lucy's on her train, but, you know, older trains, they sit at the platform for a while. So the girls have a bit of a conversation while Hazel's on the platform, and then she heads off. Lucy sees her walk out the station gates and turn left, heading up towards Glen Huntly Road, and then subsequently she's seen at the corner of Grange Road. This is a small neighbourhood, people know people, so the people who see her aren't just saying, yes, I saw a young girl in a green dress. They're saying, I saw Hazel because I know her. So she's solidly identified. She talks to a couple of guys that she knows, managed to bum a cigarette off them. It's not her favourite brand, Capstans, but she takes it anyway.
Okay.
She's seen by another young man that she knows, Leslie Burgess, walking down Grange Road in the direction of her home, smoking the cigarette. And by now we're coming up to 10 o'clock at night.
Yep.
So she's messed around a little bit, hung out on the corner with a few people she knows probably.
Yep.
And now she's heading home.
And her not going home, not something that was out of character because she often stayed at Lucy's.
That's right. So this night she's told her parents she's coming home early, but she and Lucy would often go out together. They'd go out dancing. That was something that Hazel particularly enjoyed. And sometimes she'd go home and stay the night at Lucy's house, just as Lucy had been staying at Hazel's the night before.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think the girls would stay out all night, and each set of parents would conveniently think that their daughter was safely tucked up in bed at the other house.
Yeah.
You know, teenagers. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So her parents had heard her say she was coming home, and she did seem to be heading home. When she's walking along smoking that cigarette, she's alone.
Yeah.
But subsequently, coming up to probably about 10:15 now, Leslie's gotten ahead of her. He's with a mate standing at the corner of the street here when Hazel comes around the corner. Now she's in the company of a man that he doesn't recognise, but he says grey hat, blue suit, medium build, about 5'10" or so. Hazel and this guy are walking down the centre of the road. The footpaths weren't sealed, so, a lot of people like to walk on the tarmac in the middle of the road rather than on that gravelly bit. So Hazel and this man don't acknowledge the boys as they go past. But they see them walk down, stop in front of the Wilson house, lean against the gate, sit on the gatepost, whatever, and they can hear that they're having quite an animated conversation. There's laughter. It's very light. Yeah. It seems very relaxed.
Yeah. Hazel was unfortunate, for she was barely metres from her parents' bedroom. As you've said previously, he could charm. Sodeman could be a charmer. He wasn't just a guy who'd grab people and take them away. He would sort of cajole them and they'd go with him. So she's out here with him. And Frederick, the father, Mr. Wilson, hears something and urges his wife to go out and investigate.
Yeah, well, we've got a little bit of gap. So first of all, we've got to remember that she's quite a bit older than Mena. She's 16, but she's petite. She's not a well girl. She's got tuberculosis, so she's only 5'1" and probably a bit frail. Pale, definitely pale complexion.
At the beginning of the 20th century, tuberculosis was a major cause of death in Australia, ranking second amongst males and first amongst females. The contagious bacterial disease especially affects the lungs, causing fever-like symptoms and destruction of tissue. Hazel had a mass of tubercular glands on the left side of her neck, together with a scar from an old operation, but the damage wrought on her body was made clear by her autopsy. Signs of tuberculosis in the spleen, as well as in the lymph nodes near the stomach. The pancreas and small intestine were also affected. Her heart was adhered to its covering, the pericardium, which in turn was adhered to lung tissue. As Katherine would note in The Schoolgirl Strangler, with her compromised health, Hazel Wilson wouldn't have fought much.
She's out here chatting away, and she did like to go out dancing and partying. So that's 10:15, 10:20, we've seen them come back and arrive at the house. 10:30-ish, just after, those same boys who saw them come back walk past them. One of them says goodnight. Hazel acknowledges them. The man does not. They keep going. 11:40, a neighbour comes home. He turns his car into the street. His headlights light up Hazel and this stranger standing at the gatepost. He sees Hazel definitely. The man, blue suit, grey hat, identified again, but seems to be hiding his face, so we can't actually get an identity. That neighbour goes home further down the street. That's it for them.
Yeah.
Around about midnight, the Wilsons say they think they heard something. They described it as perhaps a dog whining. But you wouldn't get up and have a look if it was just a dog whining in the street. So it was obviously something a little bit strange. Hazel Wilson's father gets up, has a look, says, think there's a dog in the street. That fits with the story. But then he says to his wife, you have a look. Again, why would you ask her to have a look if you thought it was a dog whining and you thought you saw a dog in the street? But she gets up, has a look out the window and says, I think it's a man going past carrying a parcel.
Chillingly, the man carrying the parcel was probably Sodeman carrying the girl. It was only a matter of moments between Sarah venturing out into the street and Sodeman whisking away her daughter.
And her husband says, well, you better go out the front and have a proper look, which is, again, a very strange thing, the man of the house in 19 like to do. She puts on a coat, a dressing gown, puts on some shoes, goes out, stands in the middle of the road, looks up and down both ways, cannot see a thing. It's all quiet, goes back in, tells her husband there's nothing there. They go back to sleep. They're not worried. Hazel must be staying at Lucy's. No trouble.
I mean, the police interpretation of the story was quite different. What Frederick would allegedly tell them was it maybe a man's
crouching in the street.
Crouching,
there seems to be multiple different versions that come out of Mr. Wilson. Whether he claims that he only ever said that he saw a dog in the street, and then the police would say that at one stage he'd told them there was a man crouching in the street. A neighbour would subsequently say that he'd said Hazel had come home and then gone out again and her bed hadn't been slept in. A truth reporter would say he'd overheard the Wilsons saying they had heard Hazel's voice in the street close to midnight talking to a man. The Wilsons would subsequently deny all these things, except that original story about he thinking it was a dog, she thinking it was a man carrying a parcel. But there were multiple different people, not just the police, who said the Wilsons had said something different at some stage.
Yep. It's a confusing story that raises red flags with the police. While Frederick Wilson's behaviour may have been considered odd, he had a physical flaw that would undoubtedly have affected his testimony. It was something that no one picked up, not even police. More on that later. Okay, so the next day, two of the brothers come. They live together nearby. Come to visit Mum and Dad, which they often do.
Yep.
And Sarah, Mrs. Wilson, says to one of them, "Can you please go over to the Hogans on your way to doing whatever you're doing, and just check that that Hazel stay there the night."
It's Saturday morning. No one's particularly worried. They're assuming she's stayed with Lucy. Percy and Sally, the brothers, have come home, presumably to catch a bit of breakfast or lunch, as, young guys who've moved out from home do. And if Percy hadn't been heading in that direction, no one would have bothered to say, "Can you check in with the Hogans and see if Lucy's there?"
Yeah.
But he was going that way, so they said, "Just find out." And of course, when he comes home much later, close to midday, and reports that no, she's not there and she was never there last night.
And the panic starts pretty quickly then, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how relaxed it's been, but, that was the routine in his house.
Yeah.
By now, the oldest brother, Fred Jr.'s arrived.
Yeah.
And so we've got the three young men, we've got Dad, and now we know that she didn't stay with Lucy. It's a panic.
Yeah.
So,
and why is it a panic? I mean, there's some stuff going on.
Yeah. Yes. Well,
in Melbourne.
That's right. So, to all intents and purposes, Mena Griffiths' killer is locked up. That Robert McMahon. So we're not worried about that. But there's been another murder in between that early November murder of Mena Griffiths, and now we're January 9 the next year. But on November 21st, another young woman, 26-year-old Molly Dean, has been brutally murdered and bashed and strangled in a neighbouring suburb.
Yeah. It's a case Katherine knows well, having written the fictional work The Portrait of Molly Dean. The Molly Dean murder would go unsolved, though rumours of who killed her swirled around Melbourne. Because of her bohemian lifestyle and host of party-going friends, her case gained national and international attention. Unfortunately, much like the Hazel Wilson case, there was a subtext of victim blaming in the media coverage. Former Victoria Police Detective Narelle Fraser believes the judgment of Hazel was reflective of 1930s Australian society.
She was out a lot and, fraternising with young men. Well, I think there would have been a lot of Neanderthal older detectives that would think, well, sorry, but this is what they would have thought. Oh, well, she got what she was, what's a young girl doing out late at night anyway? They would have had that attitude as well. Thank goodness we'd changed that attitude. But back then, I think, that would have been another, I was going to say nail in the coffin. That's probably the right expression, but you know what I mean. Yeah. I mean, it was the community, I suppose, not just the judiciary. The police are a representative of the community, and that's how the community used to feel. So, it's hard to break that cycle, isn't it? It takes a long time.
With the murders of Mena and Molly Dean in their minds, the family goes into a frenzy.
This is what hits their heads at this point, that she hasn't come home. There's a killer out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe she's the next victim.
Yeah. But and what's interesting too is that one of the brothers believes that it is the person who killed Mena.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That he doesn't say Molly Dean.
Yeah.
He says Mena Griffiths.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously there's kind of similarities between Mena and Hazel. They're both quite petite, small people. Hazel could be, Hazel could be considered to be younger than she actually is. But at the same time, there's similarities between Molly Dean and Hazel, because Hazel was out socialising and stuff like that.
I think, so I suppose Hazel would look quite young, like this, but I think she would present quite differently. This is a young woman who's used to going out dancing. She's smoking. I think because of her tuberculosis, she was going to die from that, and I think she was living her life while she could, and that that was obviously an issue with her family. But so she was naive. I want to say naive yet sophisticated. She would have, she wasn't afraid to bum cigarettes from total strangers. So chatting up this strange guy, and I mean, she was leaning on her own gateposts, for goodness sakes. You couldn't really be much safer than that, could you?
I mean, Mum and Dad are only meters away, really.
That's right. So when panic stations start, the family come out, and they've basically all come out into the street thinking, what are we going to do? And at this point, they see this shoe.
Yep.
There's a shoe lying in the street that no one has noticed before. Dad hasn't noticed it when he's been doing his errands this morning, coming and going.
Yeah.
None of the brothers have noticed it when they've arrived or when Percy's, come and gone.
Yep.
But now there's this shoe. And they would always swear that it wasn't there before.
Yep.
Dad picks it up.
Yep.
Drops it again and goes in to get Sarah, Hazel's mum. She comes rushing out.
Sarah, Hazel's mother, knows immediately. Her despair is profound.
Oh, no. No, it's Hazel's shoe. Oh, my God, she's been killed. Oh, my God, she's been killed.
The bereft Sarah is taken back inside.
The men go out and start looking, and they walk in the direction that we're walking. They see some scuffs in the sand out the front of their house, on the rough footpath. Has someone been scuffling their feet, or could it have been a struggle?
Katherine tells me that Hazel's body was discovered 110 metres away on what was once a vacant block on Oakley Road. We walked a very short distance toward the site.
And then they get to this point, just sort of the edge of the sealed road, and they see a sort of something in the sort of the gutter, another scratching mark as though something's been dragged from here and across the road.
Yep.
And just across the road, there's a house here now, a 1930s house, but it was a vacant lot, overgrown with weeds and things. Fred Jr., the oldest son, goes in. The other boys are sort of split up, and he's here with his dad. He goes in, and he hasn't gone in very far when he yells out, "Don't come in, she's here."
The behaviour of Mr. Wilson, Fred Sr., is odd, but he seems to be an odd character anyhow, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely an odd character. But so his son's just said, "She's here," also said, "Don't come in," but he does not go in. He doesn't go in to see his daughter. He runs next door, not to ask for help, but he knocks on the door, and the homeowner comes in. He says, "Did you hear anything last night?" And they say, "No, why?" And he says, "Because my little girl's been killed or something." And then he rushes off. They flag down a motorcyclist in the street, send him off to get the police, and then Hazel's father runs home and gets her mother. Well, the police subsequently arrive. A crowd's gathering. You can imagine the commotion, and it's in one quiet neighbourhood now. It would have been a very quiet neighbourhood then.
Yeah.
So Hazel is lying face down in this sort of tangle of weeds behind some glass. Nothing's disturbed. There's no sign of footprints, no trampled grass. Someone would later say it looked like she'd just been dropped there from the sky.
Yeah.
So she's face down. Her hands are tied behind her back with her own green belt and a strip torn from her petticoat. Her dress and coat are pulled up, and her pink bloomers have been used to tie her ankles together.
Yep.
One of the early people on the scene pulls her coat down to protect her modesty. And then when the police arrive, they roll her over, and they find out that one of her stockings has been stuffed into her mouth, tied with another strip of petticoat.
Yes.
Allowed around her chin, and her other stocking is tied very, very tightly around her neck.
Yep. Yeah. For the listener, Although we'd speculated that Frederick Sr. could well have been a war veteran suffering from PTSI, I could not find any record of his service. Despite the similarities between Mena's murder and Hazel's, the police do not establish a connection. There was no doubt in the minds of the investigating officers. Frederick Wilson was the man. Narelle believes the influence of Senior Detective Bruce undoubtedly coloured the investigation. As a reminder, Senior Detective Bruce was the policeman who wrongly arrested Robert James McMahon for the murder of Mena Griffiths.
Let's say Detective Bruce. So I'm assuming, possibly wrongly, that he's a bit of an old-timer.
Indeed, a notice in Melbourne's Age newspaper on July 9, 1934 would mark the senior detective's demise at Police Hospital, St Kilda Road, Melbourne, on July 7 of that year. He was 49 years old. The beloved husband of Eileen and fond father of Nell, Belle and Barbara would have been considered an elder statesman in a society where male average lifespans were 63 and a half years.
His influence has affected the whole investigations. And I think the younger detectives, because they would have been influenced by him. And, he's more experienced. And hence they tend to think, well, if he's saying that, he'll be right. Like, it's easy to look up to somebody. Like, I think a lot of detectives in my day, it wouldn't matter what Ron Iddles said. What Ron Iddles said was right, because Ron was just so highly regarded, and I'm assuming maybe the young detectives under Bruce or with Bruce had been affected by his attitude, his opinions.
Not that Narelle was comparing Senior Detective Bruce to Ron Iddles. Iddles is a well-respected former police detective and podcaster.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, Ron 99% of the time was right. He's a very good friend of mine. But you do look up to detectives that have been around a while, and you do tend to think, if that's what they're saying and that's what they're thinking, it's very easy to influence younger people with your opinion, younger detectives. And I think that's probably what's happened.
Robert McMahon is, on his way to being hanged for the murder of Mena.
Yeah.
So the police come into this situation, and again, Senior Detective Bruce is part of this investigation. They come in thinking, well, this is someone else. This is not the guy who killed Mena Griffiths.
Yeah, that's right.
Does that put them behind as far as an investigation goes?
Very much so. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we have these strips torn from the petticoat used to secure the hands, strips torn from the petticoat, around securing the gag. So hallmarks of the Mena Griffiths case. But then we've got this stocking around the neck.
Yeah.
And that was a Molly Dean thing.
Yeah.
And later on, they would think, maybe the perpetrator copied it. At this point, they're thinking, well, young woman out on the town. This is where we get to the victim blaming moment, both for Molly Dean and for Hazel Wilson. What was she doing out by herself late at night? Mixing with the wrong people. So we're thinking, bit of victim blaming, but yes. So
with Molly, it was the Bohemian crowd.
So she was a school teacher, but she was running with the Bohemian crowd. Those ne'er-do-well artists and what have you, the creatives, and she'd been out to see, of all things, Pygmalion about.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Come home by herself, and she was also attacked very close to her own home. So within 200 metres of her home in the neighbouring suburbs. So. That early suspicion was that this is going to be the same killer. And let's face it, the Molly Dean murder had was huge. It was sensational. There was a lot of pressure on police. So I'm sure in the backs of their mind there was that, two birds with one stone. We can clear both these up, tie it up in a nice bow.
Yep.
Everyone will feel safe again.
The more I look at this job, oh, God, Matt, so incompetent. They've cut corners. They've just had their sights set on someone and just haven't done the standard investigation.
While police did not do the hard yards on the investigation, it was easy to see why they would have had Frederick as their prime suspect. And there was certainly enough evidence to suggest that Hazel was scared of her father. She would often stay out late or not come home, and there was one anecdote about her sleeping in a phone booth with Lucy. So he must have been quite a fearsome kind of character.
I think...
Were they justified in sort of thinking that perhaps it was him?
Well, I think, Hazel was, she'd said to various friends that she was all shown to them in some way or another that she was afraid of her father when it was really late, A couple of times, Lucy said a couple of times they'd be within, 300 or 400 metres. Obviously, she wasn't using metric, but close to home. And Hazel would, it's late at night and Hazel was like, we can't go home. I want to go home. She didn't want to rouse her dad and, let him know that she was coming in that late.
Yeah.
But she, in all these stories that she told, she never reported any physical violence. And, the coroner would subsequently say that, if he wasn't disciplining his daughter, for being out on the mountain, behaving appropriately, then, he wasn't doing his job as a father. So, there was still that perception that, that she was in the wrong. But
so was she given the same amount of sympathy as Mena?
I don't think she was. She was 16. She was known to be out partying and smoking. Her mother, had pleaded with her, not to go out with these young men. Young men who bring you home at 4 o'clock in the morning aren't the sort of people you want to be associating with. And so, no, I think she was definitely not given that same degree of sympathy.
They really honed in on that, it was her father. Like, again, they didn't really look at anyone else. They had him in their sights from, very early on. And yet again, they don't think outside the square. They weren't objective. Like, they were just so focused on the father, they just couldn't see anyone else. They couldn't see the wood for the trees. It all comes back to that. They had completely discounted connecting Mena with Hazel because McMahon's inside. Her murder is inside, so it was never considered, I don't believe they ever considered that Mena's murderer was the same as Hazel's. It's very, very frustrating reading it from my point of view, as it would be yours and it will be the listeners, because it is so obvious how inept, really, they were. It is one thing after another about the incompetence.
Frederick Wilson Sr. seemed likely to hang for Sodeman's crimes. Whether back then or today, Narelle said some police officers tarnished the good name of the force.
There's a lot that police do that actually make me feel embarrassed to think that I was once affiliated with, and I still love Victoria Police. I'm a great advocate for them, but I will never, ever hide behind the fact that there are practices that I have seen, I've witnessed, that I am not proud of, not myself, that I've seen others do. And when you hear stories like this, I do. I get embarrassed to think that I'm affiliated with such incompetence. But I understand it's not me, but I was part of that organisation, and absolutely I feel embarrassed to think that I've been connected with them. And so should every other police person, mind you, because that is not how the police should should act. They should be fair. They should be honest, objective. Everything that we represent has been taken away from us by people like Detective Bruce. That's terrible. Well, I know of investigations where police have got it so wrong, and only recently, and there doesn't seem to have been many consequences at all. There's one in particular. It just staggers me that the police got this particular investigation. It was a murder, and the wrong person went into jail for the murder, and the police were proven to have had tunnel vision, just a bit like with Detective Bruce. And, I'm out of the system now, but I don't believe that the police responsible have suffered any consequences. In fact, I believe one of them has been promoted. Again, that makes me feel embarrassed to think that there are this sort of behaviour. It is still happening. I would have hoped that it would have been stamped out years ago. But, there's still police who have tunnel vision and will do anything to prove who they think did it rather than, look at the evidence and look at it objectively. So it's terrible to say that, but they don't they haven't.
The key to good skin is hidden deep in the ocean. Osea's Undaria algae body oil harnesses the powers of Undaria seaweed in every bottle to transform dry skin to silky, soft, and glowing without feeling greasy. Seaweed is a nutrient-dense superfood packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that help replenish the skin's moisture barrier and maintain a healthy glow. Osea's Undaria algae body oil is not your typical body oil. Rich, yet never greasy, and clinically shown to instantly improve skin elasticity. See the power of Undaria seaweed after just one use. Get healthy, glowing skin with clean vegan skin and body care from Osea. For 10% off your first order, use code SEAWEED10 at OseaMalibu.com. Plus, free samples with every order and free shipping on orders over $50. Use code SEAWEED10 for 10% off at OSEAMalibu.com.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. They're the home of the #1 checkout on the planet and the not-so-secret Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales happening. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds and Skims use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/start selling. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/start selling to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/start selling.
Had any consequences for putting somebody else inside that was never ever responsible?
Initially, at least, things did not look good for Frederick Sr.
At the inquest, which is, a couple of months later, by the time they've gathered all this information, 30 plus witnesses, all the police come and testify to these, the way the Fred Wilson Sr.'s story keeps changing and they're very suspicious of him. His wife is put on the stand to testify about the domestic violence directed against her to prove his violent temperament. She, poor woman, desperately tries to backtrack. First of all, she says, well, he used to be violent, but, not since I had my mental breakdown 6 years ago. But then there's all these things that she's, sworn in her police statement. They say, well, what about this thing where he attacked you with the razor? And just, well, he didn't attack me. He kind of ran towards me with a laser. And then what about this thing where he attacked you with the axe? Well, he didn't attack me with an axe. I'd locked him out of the house and he broke into the house with the axe.
Yeah,
you know,
as you do.
Yeah, and no, he didn't strangle me, you know, or try to strangle me. I was lying in bed, he was lying in bed, his hands were around my throat. Yeah. So, you know, no matter, you can't dress those stories up. No, what they are.
No.
But so the police were desperately trying to have him, on, you know, as their suspect, to have him named at that inquest as the killer. Yep. But they couldn't make it stick. It came out, he would testify that our friend Detective Bruce had kind of tried to, you know, get him to confess, you know, just look, you snapped, we get it. She was a bit of a wayward girl. You put your hands around her throat. She was a bit fragile. You went too far. Just admit it. You know, you'll be back on the streets in no time, no worries. And his response was, why would I admit to that? And they're like, mate, you know, we know.
Yeah.
So, you know, but he, you know, obviously he wasn't having a bar.
Kind of silence.
Yes, yeah. He didn't do it. And so they couldn't make the case stick. The coroner brought down a verdict of murder by person or persons unknown.
Police clearly had tunnel vision and they were blindsided by this next revelation. It's 94 years after the fact, but I'm gobsmacked. Indeed, I could not even make proper words as a response.
The other interesting detail that came out, that shoe that he had not seen the whole day, the coroner asked him a question as he was leaving the witness stand. It's not in the record as to what that question is, but it was obviously something the coroner had noticed, because we find out at this point that Hazel Wilson's father is completely blind in one eye, which explains why he didn't see that shoe off to one side.
Wow, gee. Thank you. Did he have a defence lawyer or not?
He consulted a solicitor. He did not have a lawyer in the courtroom, but that actually, they brought that up against him. Why did you consult a solicitor? Why did you consult a solicitor after your daughter was murdered? Probably because it looked like you were going to try and defend the from the daughter's murder, but, you know, they felt that was a point against him, that he'd actually gone to a lawyer.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, if we want to be a bit generous to the police, they didn't know about serial killers then. Their experience was, you know, as you said earlier, that it was the close male relative, it was the recently released con, there's our Robert McMahon, or it was the male friend, which we will come to in subsequent cases in this story.
Yeah. Frederick walks free, and like another family just absolutely devastated. I mean, no matter what was going on, you know, at their house, losing a kid in those sort of circumstances just must have been absolutely devastating.
Absolutely, and the extra thing in this one, you know, we had issues with the Mena Griffiths case and our friend Detective Bruce, and, you know, that court case for libel with Smith's Weekly. In this one, because Hazel's father had said, you know, the police tried to strong arm me. That, you know, they tried to. You know, I did not say that. They say I say that. I did not say that. So, Detective Bruce and the police force tried to sue Hazel's father for perjury and lying.
Oh,
they tried to bring charges against.
Not again.
They tried to bring charges against him for perjury, saying that he lied in court. But when he said, "I did not make that statement," that he lied in court when he said, "You tried to get me to confess." So they tried to bring charges of perjury against him.
As a point of clarification on the timelines, Senior Detective Bruce had not yet taken legal action against Smith's Weekly. That is in the future. Clearly, though, legal action was part of his MO. And given, well...
Very quickly thrown out.
Given Senior Detective Bruce's form, you wouldn't be surprised if he's gilded the lily a little bit.
Well, mind you, if you read his official record, it's an exemplary record.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
But no, that was swiftly thrown out. But once again, it's, you know, time and attention spent on that when they could have been looking for a killer.
Yeah. Frustratingly, the connection between Mena and Hazel's murders seemed unmistakable.
The coroner was quite specific that the stocking around her neck was post-mortem, that she had been strangled, as he said, by a man's hands. And so from the description, a man facing her. So our killer's watching her die and then he's enjoying. And then everything else tying her hands behind her back, putting the gag in her mouth, bloomers around the ankles. That's all happened after she's been murdered.
Yep. So are we assuming that he's taken her from the front of her place and dragged her onto this block?
Well, dragged or carried. I mean, if you're carrying something, that the scuff marks could have been his feet.
Yep.
She's going to be a lightweight girl at 5'1" with tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And he's a big guy used to manual labour. We did have her mother saying man carrying a parcel. So there is that. And we had the odd whimpering dog that wasn't enough of a dog whimpering that was worth investigating. So was that the sound of their daughter being strangled?
With no murders for several years, people started to believe that the real killer had hanged for a different crime. Then rumours circulated about the possible guilt of David Bennett, a.k.a. Robert Bennett, after his attacking a 4-year-old girl, Norma Kendall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what happened there?
Oh, wow. Well, this was the guy that actually fingered Robert McMahon for Mena's killing. So here's a particularly nasty piece of work. He'd been locked up in Western Australia for assaulting a young mentally disabled girl in a toilet. And subsequently he'd wound up here. He was supposedly sentenced to death in Western Australia, but he claimed it was never a death sentence. But he gets out of jail in Western Australia, somehow washes up in Victoria, and this is a particularly nasty assault of the young girl over Carlton Way, a little 4-year-old girl coming back from Sunday school. He separates her from her brother, takes her into an abandoned house. He is seen. And the little boy is saying, that man's got my sister. So people are on his, the pastor from the church and other men are on his tail very quickly, but not quickly enough. He's shoved the little girl out the back door and he's grabbed by these people. The little girl is found later wandering the streets, very distressed. She spends several weeks in hospital. Her injuries are quite severe. Once they'd rounded him up, because that attack on the little 4-year-old happened after Hazel Wilson, they thought this could be the man.
Okay. But, and then he's gone.
He's gone.
Yep. Bennett was hanged at Melbourne's Pentridge Prison in September 1932, the first of 11 people to be executed there. The second was Sodeman. How far are we from Sodeman's house?
About 2 kilometres.
Oh, okay.
20-minute walk back past the Wilson house. And this is definitely his stomping ground. We sort of find places he visited and places he loved.
Yeah, it's all very close, isn't it? Yeah. Wow. Okay. Do you want to go there?
Ruby Street?
Yeah, have you got time to...
What time are we? Yep, we can do that.
All right, cool. Katherine and I travelled to Sodeman's old address on Ruby Street in Ormond. For me, it's a startling discovery.
So that was what's now part of the school property. So it's got the original schoolhouse on it. So it would have been where this sports ground is.
Sodeman's house is no longer standing, but it turns out he would have lived right next door to Ormond Primary School. The school has been at its original site since January 1891. So 1930s, and he's right next to a school.
He's right next to a school, yeah.
Oh, my God. Wow. Okay.
It's a scary thought, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's terrible.
But maybe I think he was quite a clever man. I think that would have been too close and too easy. Because school kids are pretty observant, and if something happened, they'd say, "Oh, she was talking to that man who lives next door." I think he was a bit too smart for that. Yeah.
Gee, who knows what was going through his head, though. I have another shocking realisation about the location of Sodeman's house. It's just 400 metres from the Wheatley Road address where he murdered Mena Griffiths. Next week on Sodeman the Schoolgirl Strangler.
That she, even though she was ostensibly from this remote, perhaps slightly naive country girl, but she had been told you'd look out for strangers.
Yep.
Connection. He doesn't have to try and win her confidence or get her to like him, because he knows the family. she would trust him.
My proof listener and editorial assistant is A. Dunn. Special thanks goes to Mark Drury for his introductory voiceover and theme music, and Grace Griffith for playing the part of Sarah. To the Glen Ira Historical Society for their help with research into Ormond in the 1930s. And my special guests, Katherine Kovacic and Narelle Fraser. Thanks for listening. See you next week.